So, hello everyone, and I hope you had a nice holiday for Hanukkah. So, let's start with a few minutes of sitting quietly and settling our mind in the present, the here and now. So, let your body relax. Let your breathing flow in and out in a natural way. Let your mind settle down. There are thoughts in your mind about things you did earlier today or yesterday or any time in the past. Let go of those thoughts. And also let go of thoughts of the future, plans for later, today, tonight, tomorrow. But just let your mind be in the present, being aware of the breath flowing in and flowing out. And then, as the motivation for this class, I know that all of you do have feelings of kindness, care, concern, altruism for other people, for the world, wanting to make the world a better place, less suffering, fear, anxiety, hatred, and all the other kinds of physical and mental sufferings that exist. Wanting to increase happiness and peace and positive experiences, all the positive states of mind that bring those about, which is compassion, care, and altruism. So bring those thoughts and feelings into your mind, into your heart. And connect that with what we're doing in this class. Have the wish that you will learn things that will help you to be more helpful to others, to the world. I mean, helping the world is a big job. We're just one person. But whatever peace and happiness we are able to bring to others, even just a few people, does benefit the world. So we have been going through the the Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment, and now we are on the section known as the Great Scope, which is all about the Bodhisattva's path, how to develop the Bodhisattva attitude, Bodhichitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha, to help all living beings, and then how to practice that path and actually become a Buddha. And so we've gone through a couple of different methods for developing bodhicitta. We just had time to go through these kind of quickly. And then following that in the book, there's a section about bodhisattva vows or precepts. And I'm not going to go through all the points of that, but I did send you slides with some of the main points I'll be covering today. So the first slide at the top, it says committing oneself to bodhicitta. So this is just kind of a summary of those points. So it says, after generating bodhicitta, one can make commitments to uphold this mind. There are two levels of these commitments, and they correspond to the two levels of bodhicitta. So we did talk about that before. There's two levels of bodhicitta, two kinds of bodhicitta. One is called aspiring bodhicitta. That's having the wish to become enlightened, to help all living beings. And that's compared to having the wish to make a journey somewhere. Like maybe a person has the wish to go to Tibet. So that wish is in their mind. They may have thoughts about it, fantasies about it, dreams about it. But it's still just the level of a wish. So that's like aspiring bodhicitta. Aspiring bodhicitta is having the wish to become a Buddha, to be fully enlightened in order to help all living beings. So with regard to aspiring bodhicitta, there are commitments, which are mainly practices to prevent bodhicitta from degenerating in this life, and then other practices that prevent being separated from bodhicitta in future lives. So, kind of in practical terms, in the traditional teachings, the way it's explained, it sounds like one works to develop bodhicitta, and you do that for a long time. And then when you get to the point where bodhicitta is something spontaneous, effortless, it just arises in your mind kind of naturally without having to make any effort. You say, just by seeing another being or thinking of another being, you have awareness of their suffering, and you have the wish to relieve them of their suffering and the wish to bring them happiness. And this feeling of bodhicitta, I want to become enlightened, I will become enlightened to be able to help all sentient beings. That feeling is just arises in your mind naturally, spontaneously. So when it becomes like that, it's natural, effortless, then that's the point at which you become a bodhisattva. And so it's said that when that happens, when you become a bodhisattva, then you took the bodhisattva vows, the bodhisattva precepts, after you generate actual bodhicitta. So maybe it was like that in the past, in India and Tibet and so on. But my experience is that people take bodhisattva vows when they just feel strongly that this is what they wish to do. They want to follow this path, cultivate bodhicitta, become enlightened to help all living beings. So, for example, in my own case, when I started studying Buddhism in Dharamsala at the Tibetan library, and I was going to classes every day. And I took refuge. I don't remember how long after I started studying, but it was pretty fast. I took refuge. And that way I made the commitment to be a Buddhist and follow the Buddhist path. And that's when I got my name, Sangye Khadro. And then there was an opportunity to take the Bodhisattva vows. I think there were some people who wanted to take the Bodhisattva vows, and so the teacher was offering that ceremony. And I took them too, because I just felt so strongly that this is what I've been looking for all my life. This is what I want to do. I want to follow this path and become a Buddha and help all living beings. So it was probably only a few months after I started learning Buddhism. So I really kind of rushed into it very quickly. But ideally, one should think carefully, what you really want to do with your life. And it's also important to study the vows, to learn about the vows carefully, and, decide, is this what really what I want to do? And am I able to do it? Although taking vows and taking precepts doesn't mean you have to keep them perfectly, but you have to at least wish to do so and try to do so. And there are things you can do to purify them. But one should at least feel very uh, certain that this is what one wants to do. So, so like I say, there's these two levels of the vows. The first one is aspiring bodhicitta. So when a person does feel ready to make a commitment to this path, they really want to follow the Bodhisattva's path, then they can take these aspiring bodhicitta precepts in a ceremony with a teacher. For example, the Dalai Lama, when he's giving public teachings, and even now when he's teaching online, at the conclusion of his teachings, he will sometimes offer this opportunity for people to take the aspiring bodhicitta vows. And so basically, when you take those vows, you make the promise that you will maintain this attitude of bodhicitta. You won't abandon it. You won't give it up. You won't change your mind later and say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So you have to be pretty sure that this is what you want to do. And in order to maintain that sense of commitment to the Bodhisattva's path, there's certain practices that you need to do. For example, every day to remember the benefits of bodhicitta and then renew your commitment. There's some verses you can recite in order to renew your bodhicitta every day. So that's just briefly about aspiring bodhicitta. And then engaging bodhicitta. So in engaging bodhicitta, that's the second level of bodhicitta. So that's going beyond just having the wish to become enlightened, but making the commitment, I am going to do it. So, for example, the person who wanted to go to Tibet, instead of just sitting at home and dreaming about going to Tibet, they actually start making plans. They go to a travel agent, they buy an air ticket, they get their visa, they, start packing their bags and so on. So you're actually doing the things that need to be done in order to reach your goal. So that's similar with the engaging bodhicitta. So there you are actively engaged in doing the practices that will lead you to enlightenment, that will enable you to become enlightened. And those practices are mainly condensed in the 6 perfections, which we're going to start studying later today. So with those vows, it's a kind of more, it's a stronger commitment. There's actual vows, 18 root vows. So 18 vows are the main ones that you really have to keep. And then there are 46 secondary precepts. So you're taking on quite a big commitment there. The 18 are actions that you need to avoid. For example, the first one, the first of the 18 is vowing that you will avoid praising yourself and belittling others. So, for example, as a teacher, I'm a Buddhist teacher. So if when I'm teaching, I praise myself, I talk about what a great person I am, and I belittle other teachers. So I say, oh, that teacher so and so, they are selfish and they are greedy and so on and so forth. So if I were to talk like that, I would be breaking the first of the 18 root downfalls. So yeah. So there are things that we could find ourselves doing if we're not careful and if we're not, watching our mind and managing, taming our delusions such as ego and self-centeredness and pride and so on and so forth. And then the 46 secondary, one of the 18 root bodhisattva downfalls is also to give up bodhicitta, even for one sentient being. So if there's one person that you find really annoying, and maybe they're doing really terrible things, and towards that one person you think, I am not going to help that person. Yeah, I'm not going to work for enlightenment in order to help this sentient being. So if you have that kind of thought, that kind of attitude, then that's breaking a root bodhisattva downfall. And it's quite heavy. If we do take these vows and then break them, we're creating very negative karma. They can be purified, they can be retaken if we do make a mistake, but it's better not to break them if we can avoid it. And then the 46 secondary precepts are about actions that are related to the 6 perfections. For example, not being generous, not giving, not keeping our ethical conduct, and not staying patient. So for example, even if someone gets angry at us and insults us, speaks harsh words to us, if we retaliate, if we get angry back and return harsh words for the harsh words that were sent our way, then that would be breaking a secondary bodhisattva precept. So they're precepts to help us practice the 6 perfections, help us keep our behavior in line with the 6 perfections. So, like I say, it's good to study the vows, to learn the vows first, and think carefully about whether or not one is willing to keep them. Then, if you do, if there's an opportunity to take those vows. Again, it has to be done in a ceremony. The last bullet point says these commitments are initially made in a ritual ceremony with a teacher, but then renewed daily. So we're supposed to every day renew our commitment to take these vows. So the book Practicing the Path just mentions these. It doesn't go into the details with them, but if anyone is interested, I can help you get more information about these. Okay, so now we'll move on to the 6 perfections. Oh, yeah, so slide number 3 in the list has the 6 perfections. And so it said that Bodhisattva is somebody who wants to become enlightened to help all living beings. And in order to become enlightened, you actually do things. You have to create the causes to become enlightened. And so the main causes are condensed in these 6 practices, 6 perfections. We did go through these earlier. I think in year 5, second semester, I went through the first 4 of these with you. And then with Venerable Yunten, I think, following that, you studied the last 2 of the 6 perfections. So you have heard these before, but it doesn't hurt to go through them again. And hopefully now it becomes more clear to you how these practices do fit into the overall structure of the path to enlightenment. So here are the 6 perfections, and we'll go through them one by one, starting with the first one of generosity. And finding wisdom. So there's also this discussion you've probably heard many times about how a bodhisattva needs to practice 2 main things, method and wisdom. Method and wisdom. So these are compared to the 2 wings of a bird. A bird is unable to fly if it has only 1 wing, it needs 2 wings. And so the 2 wings for a bodhisattva to be able to travel to enlightenment are these two, method and wisdom. So the method side of the path includes things like compassion, loving kindness, altruism, helping sentient beings, and so on. So the first five of the perfections belong to that side of the path, method side of the path. And then the other wing of the bird is wisdom. And so the sixth perfection belongs to that side of the path. So that's one explanation. Another explanation says that the first four are method. They're the method side of the path. Because those are more about working with other sentient beings, practicing generosity, giving them what they need, and practicing ethics, not harming them, being patient with sentient beings, not getting angry at them. And joyous effort is having a lot of joyful energy to do what is helpful, what is right, what is good, not being lazy. It's the opposite of laziness. And then concentration. It is more connected with wisdom, because if we want to develop wisdom, we do need concentration. We need to be able to keep our mind concentrated rather than distracted, wandering all over the place. So it does make sense that that belongs more with the wisdom side of the path. So anyway, the point is there are different ways of dividing up the six perfections when it comes to method and wisdom. And in the book, Yangtze Rinpoche also mentions 6 pure qualities that a bodhisattva has when practicing the 6 perfections. I'm not going to go through all of those. You can read them in the book. The first of the 6 pure qualities is motivation. So what that means is when a bodhisattva is practicing any of these 6 things, they're doing so with the motivation to help all living beings. So, for example, even if they just give a handful of food to a hungry person or a hungry animal, their motivation isn't just to help that one person in front of them, but it's to help all living beings. So they're thinking, I want to help all sentient beings and free them from their suffering and help them achieve happiness. And to be able to do that, I want to become a Buddha. I want to become fully enlightened. And that's the motivation they have for this act of giving, even if they're just giving to one person. They're thinking of all sentient beings, wanting to give to all sentient beings. And so that's the motivation they have when they practice generosity. So then let's move on to the first of the 6 perfections, which is generosity, perfection of generosity. So the term perfection, when we say the perfection of generosity, it's distinguished from just mere generosity. And it's mainly distinguished by that motivation. So you could have a bodhisattva giving a handful of food to a hungry person, and you could have an ordinary person giving a handful of food to another person. So they're doing the same action. The action is the same, but the motivation may be different. In the case of the bodhisattva, as I mentioned, they're thinking of all sentient beings, wanting to become enlightened to help all sentient beings. And that's their motivation for giving this handful of food. The other person may not have that motivation. They're just seeing a hungry person, a hungry animal, and feel compassion, and they're giving to that one hungry person. And of course, that's a virtuous thing to do. It's a wonderful, fantastic thing to do. But the motivation is much more kind of narrow and limited. So it doesn't have the same amount of power and merit as in the case of the bodhisattva. So the meaning of perfection of generosity is when a bodhisattva is practicing generosity, they're doing so with the motivation of attaining enlightenment to help all living beings. So that's what makes it a perfection. Okay, so what is generosity? The first sentence there says, generosity is the wish to give unhindered by attachment and miserliness. So generosity is mainly a mental attitude. It starts in the mind, having the wish to give, and one is free, or as much as possible free of attachment to one's things, and miserliness, which I hope you know that word. It's stinginess, being attached to your money and your property, not wanting to give, to share it with others. So Bodhisattva needs to overcome those attitudes and genuinely, sincerely wish to give whatever you have to others. In fact, ideally, a bodhisattva doesn't even think of, they don't think in terms of my things, okay? They totally give up attachment and a sense of ownership to their own things. And they think, my things belong to others. My things belong to other sentient beings. I certainly don't have that attitude myself, but this is what a bodhisattva thinks. So they're just ready to give whenever there is need. For example, one time, many, many, many years ago, I was in Dharamsala, and there were some teachings going on, and I was staying at Tushita, which is up in the mountains, and it was cold. It was probably in the winter, so it was quite cold. And one evening, I went to see Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's staying there, and I was sitting, in the room with him, and I must have looked cold. I was probably kind of, shivering like this. And he just immediately took off his outer robe. We call this the Zen. He had a Zen that was made of wool. And he just immediately took it off and gave it to me, without any hesitation. And I said, "But Rinpoche, you need it. Aren't you cold?" He said, no, it's okay. Please take. So that was quite extraordinary that he just, without any hesitation, gave me his own robe to keep me warm. So that's, just an example of how a bodhisattva is. As soon as they see somebody in need, they will give whatever they have, even if it means depriving themselves of that. So to develop this wish, this attitude of generosity, we can contemplate the advantages of generosity and the shortcomings of miserliness. So in the book, Yangtze Rinpoche didn't go into details with this, so I'll just share with you some other information. So for one thing, when we practice generosity, it's very powerful, it's virtuous, so we're creating good karma, virtue, merit, and that merit becomes the cause of our, especially if you're a bodhisattva, or you're aspiring to be a bodhisattva, so you're thinking of all sentient beings. So with that motivation, an act of giving, even just giving a handful of food to one hungry animal or one hungry person, becomes very, very powerful, huge amount of merit that enables you to reach enlightenment, Buddhahood, to help all living beings. So that's one of the benefits of generosity. And then some other benefits from other books on the practice is that you get some immediate benefit in the sense of a happy mind. So I think we all know that experience when we give to others, provided you do have positive motivation, you feel joyful, and also the other person hopefully will be joyful. And so there's a lot of joy, both for yourself and for the other person. So that's an immediate benefit. And then karmically, it's said that giving is the cause of wealth. So by giving now, in a future, usually it means future life, another life, you will be born wealthy. So even if you're not like a billionaire, but at least you'll have what you need. You won't be impoverished and starving. And so that's useful, because if we're impoverished and starving, then it becomes difficult to practice the Dharma. You need to have a full stomach to be able to meditate and practice and help others. So being impoverished is very unhelpful. So the fact that we have enough in this lifetime, we have what we need in this lifetime, means we must have practiced giving in past lives. And then the long-term goals of the long-term benefit is attaining nirvana, attaining enlightenment in the future. So bodhisattvas, there's stories about bodhisattvas in the past and how they would practice generosity over many, many lifetimes, and not just giving their possessions, their money and so forth, but even giving their body, their home, or kingdom. Like in some cases, they may be a royal person, and sometimes this king will just give away their whole kingdom to somebody else. So bodhisattvas are great examples of unselfish giving. And then the shortcomings of miserliness, on the other hand. So if we don't practice giving, and if we're miserly, and then that brings shortcomings. So miserliness is one of the secondary mental factors, the secondary afflictions. So you've probably heard those before, and it's based on attachment. Based on attachment. So that means that miserliness itself is a cause of suffering. It's when it comes up in our mind, you can probably notice how it affects our mind. We feel tense, unhappy, fearful, anxious. If I give my things away to others, what will I have for myself? And so there's an immediate disadvantage of having miserliness. And it's also a cause of continuing to exist in samsara, stay in samsara, and not be able to get free and attain liberation and enlightenment. And so for Buddhists, somebody who wants to follow the path, miserliness is something to overcome, something to be free of. So it brings short-term problems and also long-term problems. And so it's good to contemplate these points, and that will induce a sense of wanting to be more generous and less miserly. But if we are miserly, it may take time to overcome that. And that's something we can work on gradually. For example, there's a story that Tibetans tell about one Tibetan man who was extremely miserly and couldn't give anything to anybody. So his teacher advised him to give to himself, practice giving from one hand to another. And so he practiced giving just with himself. And then he got used to doing that. And then slowly he was able to start giving small things to other people. And gradually he practiced more and was able to give more things and larger things, more valuable things. So that's a nice way to go about it. Just start with small things and gradually build up, and eventually you can give larger and larger things. I always had the problem of being very miserly and not generous, but I was inspired by those kind of stories and by the teachings, and so I did start to practice giving more, and then I'm able to give more and more gifts and donations and so on and so forth. So So there's three types of giving. The first one is giving the Dharma. And this is the practice mainly for ordained people, like ordained Buddhist monks and nuns, because we're not really supposed to have material things. But we do have Dharma. That's what we do with our life, is study the Dharma. And so when we know the Dharma, we are advised to share it with others, to teach the Dharma. And ideally, but of course, lay people can teach Dharma as well. It's not restricted to ordained people. But ideally, one should have learned the Dharma well. One should study and make sure that you do have a correct understanding before sharing it with others. And also have the right motivation. The motivation for giving Dharma should be compassion, altruism, and not the desire for fame or material gain. Unfortunately, this does sometimes happen. People give Dharma, but they charge money. They won't give Dharma unless they receive some material reimbursement. But that isn't the right motivation. Traditionally, Dharma is given for free. The Dalai Lama, whenever he's given donations for his teachings, he gives them away. But Yangtze Rinpoche said, giving Dharma can also include other teaching other things. It doesn't have to be, religious teachings, Buddhist teaching, but teaching medicine, teaching life skills, teaching therapy, teaching things that help people, that will bring help and benefit to people. If we do this with an altruistic intention, altruistic motivation, and I suppose school teachers as well, when they're teaching children the skills they need, the knowledge and skills they need to be able to survive in life, they're giving with an altruistic motivation. That could also be included in giving Dharma. Number 2 is giving protection from fear. This means saving lives, if we ever have that opportunity, which sometimes happens. Animals or insects are sometimes in danger, and we can rescue them from danger and save their life. But also, this includes if there's a person who's frightened or upset, emotionally upset, which is the case in the work that you do. The patients that you meet with are often mentally suffering mentally. And so you're offering them comfort, helping them to be relieved of their mental suffering. So that's also included in giving protection from fear. And the third, giving material things. So this is the most common type of giving. It can include money, food, clothes, medicine, whatever is needed by others. Although it does need to be done with wisdom and skill. So, like a gross example, if somebody asks for a weapon, like a gun, and if they have the intention to, why would people have a gun if they don't want to use it to kill? That's the reason for having a gun. So giving a gun, giving another kind of weapon, would not be correct for a bodhisattva. Like there was this terrible incident that happened recently in America. A 15-year-old boy shot many of his classmates, killing 4 and wounding others. So his father gave him this gun. It was a gift from his father. And now even the parents have been arrested, and they're facing, facing possible trial and jail sentence. So that would definitely not be the right kind of giving for a bodhisattva. So we do have to use our wisdom and give things only if they will be beneficial, both to the person, the recipient to whom we're giving, and also to other beings. And there's also a 4th type of giving that's sometimes mentioned, not in this book, but it's giving love. giving love. So giving love is simply cultivating loving kindness and then acting in a loving way to others. So that's something we do when we, for example, meditate on the four immeasurable thoughts, generating loving kindness for other beings. And just by being friendly and loving towards everyone we meet, we are practicing that kind of giving. So there's a lot of details with regard to giving. We don't have time to go through all of them, but they're there in the book. So, for example, the right type of attitude one should have when one is giving. Well, ideally, one gives unconditionally without expecting anything in return, which is difficult. We expect at least the person to show some gratitude and say thank you. And if they don't, we might get annoyed. But a bodhisattva doesn't expect anything, and even if the person doesn't show any gratitude or thanks, they don't get upset about that. And we should also not give with the thought of other people thinking how generous we are, becoming renowned and praised as a generous person. So we should try to not have those kinds of thoughts in our mind, but sincerely wishing to help others, to bring benefit to others. Also, when a bodhisattva is practicing any of the six perfections, they practice all six together. That's quite amazing, but it takes time. Of course, they're developing these qualities over a long period of time. So, for example, in the case of giving, so they're practicing giving. They also practice ethics at the same time, meaning that they don't do anything unethical in their practice of giving. They keep good ethics. So Robin Hood, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, would not be bodhisattva kind of activity. And then patience, the third perfection. So they remain patient while they're giving. So even if there's difficulties they have to go through, or if the recipient is behaving in an unruly way, not saying thank you and just grabbing the stuff and running off, they don't get upset or angry. So they remain patient. And then joyous effort, the fourth perfection. So they have joyous effort about giving. They don't get bored or tired of it. They just want to keep doing it more and more and more with joy. And then concentration. So they also have concentration on what they're doing. Their mind isn't wandering and distracted. So they're focused on their act of giving. And wisdom, the sixth perfection. So bringing wisdom into the practice of giving, one already has to have some amount of wisdom of emptiness, understanding that there's no inherent existence. So bodhisattva, when they're giving, they have the understanding that the I, the one who is giving, is empty of inherent existence, doesn't exist inherently. And the recipient that they're giving to is also empty of inherent existence. And then the act of giving and whatever they're giving, like food, is also empty of inherent existence. So they've been learning about this and contemplating this for a long time, so they have good understanding of it. But they're able to maintain that awareness when they are practicing giving. So it's quite a complex practice, as you can see, to be a bodhisattva and practice these six perfections. It takes a lot of time and energy and skill, but they're able to do it. And it's amazing that they are able to give in that way. So the last thing we'll look at is 4 obstacles to giving. So these are mentioned in the book on page 366, 367. So it's good to be aware of these and how we can overcome them. So the first is not being familiar with giving, just not having the habit of giving. That was definitely the case with myself, coming from a family where there wasn't a whole lot of generosity, some, but not a lot. So I just didn't have the habit of giving, except at Christmas. We always, we give Christmas presents to each other, but then you're going to get presents yourself. So kind of makes it easier to give. But yeah, I found giving difficult. It just wasn't something familiar to me. So the antidote to that is simply to develop the habit of giving, to make it a habit. And like I said before, you start small. And anyway, for all of you, since you're parents, you do have that habit because you have to give to your children. Right from the start of their life, you have to give them food, and then you give them other things they need, and give them presents and school books and so on and so forth. So, but it's good to develop the habit of giving, not just to our family and friends, but even to strangers and even to people we might dislike. I remember once reading something or hearing something. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was giving advice to somebody who was having difficulty with another person. And his advice was, give gifts to that person. And that's the last thing we would normally think of, What do you mean, giving a gift to my enemy? This person who's driving me crazy, who's doing all these terrible things, giving them a gift? Are you kidding? So this is our normal reaction to that. But I remember reading a story about somebody who did this with a neighbor. They had a neighbor who was very annoying and very irritating. And I think it was their teacher. Their teacher advised them to give them presents. So they did. They started giving presents to their neighbor. And the neighbor changed. Yeah, they softened up and started being a nicer person. So that's the reason. I mean, of course, the reason is ideally one should do this without any conditions, just to practice giving, just to practice loving kindness. But there's a greater chance that the person will change and stop their misbehavior if we are kind to them. I mean, people love receiving gifts. So if you give a gift to somebody, they're going to go, what? What? And there's a greater chance their mind will start to change and become more open and more friendly towards you. Whereas if you just are mean to them and nasty to them, there's not much chance they're going to change. Okay, number 2 is fear, thinking that one will become poor. Okay, if I give, I won't have what I need. So this doesn't mean we should give everything we have. We can certainly keep what we need for ourselves and our family. You don't want to give away all your food and then your kids are going to be hungry and have nothing to eat. So we do need to fulfill our responsibilities to our family. But giving a certain amount isn't going to make you poor. Sometimes, we're too worried about that. So what Yangtze Rinpoche says in the book is, the antidote to this is to think, if I don't give, I will remain in samsara. If I don't practice giving, I will just continue to be born in samsara and experience all the sufferings of samsara over and over and over again. On the other hand, if I practice giving, then this will be the cause for me to attain liberation and enlightenment. So we're aiming for these higher states, these higher goals. And giving is one of the causes for that. So we should at least give a certain amount of what we have to others. You don't have to impoverish yourself. But I just read, there was an article in the BBC the other day about a man who I think he started some business, some company, and he was very generous. But then he made this decision that he was going to give away 15% of his earnings to charity. So he made that kind of vow or promise, which is quite amazing, quite a lot. And it said it meant that he'll probably have to work longer to be able to save up enough for himself to be able to retire. But he looked very happy in the photo. This man looked very happy. So he was quite happy to make this generous offer. And then number 3 is being attached to our things. So having attachment. So this is another obstacle to giving. So to overcome attachment, the best antidotes are to contemplate impermanence, the fact that we're not going to be here forever, and we cannot keep our things forever. There will come a time when we have to die and separate, leave behind all of our things. We can't take them with us. So contemplating that can help us to let go of our attachment. And also, if we think of the benefits of giving and then start giving away our things before we die, then we're able to use our belongings to create merit, to create virtue. We have to leave them behind anyway. They're going to go to other people anyway. So we might as well start giving them away now. And the last one is not understanding the positive karmic results of giving. And so, again, he says, an antidote to that is to contemplate impermanence, but I think also to contemplate the benefits of giving, just to become more aware of the benefits of giving and make that part of our way of thinking, our way of living, then it will be easier to start giving. And there's also a section in the book about giving through visualization, how we can give mentally by visualizing. And it reminded me of this meditation. We did it in year 5. It was a meditation composed by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, where you imagine the elements of your body, the earth, water, fire, and wind, elements of the body, transforming into the things that are needed by others. Do you remember that? It's quite beautiful. So you think of the earth element of your body becoming earth for farmers, for example, where they can grow their crops, and it becomes buildings, houses for people to live in, and so on. And then the water element of your body becomes delicious drinks for people, and also beautiful fountains and rivers and so on. So it's a really beautiful meditation. I was thinking of doing it, but we've run out of time. Maybe we can do it later.
Yeah, later. Yeah.
Because it's also good for the other group, cohort 2, sorry, because they've been learning about the elements and the elements of the body. So this is a nice meditation to share our elements with other beings and give to them. So let's do that later tonight. Okay, so we've come to the end of our time, and the last slide just gives the reading for next week. So next week we'll look at the perfection number 2, which is ethics, and we'll probably also start on the 3rd perfection, patience. That's a bit long, so we might need 2 sessions for that. So there's the pages for next time. And if you have questions, you can email them to me, and I can bring them up in future classes. Okay, so let's just finish by making a mental dedication of the positive energy we've created during this session, starting with a good motivation, an altruistic motivation, and then listening to these teachings on the perfections, and especially perfection of giving. They're beautiful, inspiring teachings and very beneficial to help us in our practice. So we've created this positive energy, and now let's share that positive energy with other people, other beings all over the world, all over the universe. May it help all of them be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, such as miserliness and attachment. And may it help them have happiness and the causes of happiness, such as loving kindness, compassion, and generosity. May this bring benefit to the minds of all living beings everywhere.